Do you want to boost your TEAS 7 exam score? Well, while you're studying math and science, don't forget about the ELU, English Language and Usage, and reading sections. They weigh just as much as math and science on the test, and it's just as important to study them. That's why today we're giving you an overview of the topics and types of questions that are addressed by the English Language and Usage part of the exam. I'm Liz, the English subject matter expert for Smart Edition Academy. Today, we're going to do the overview in this video, but we've got a ton more resources like study groups, practice tests, courses, everything you need at the links in the description below. So don't forget to check those out. And of course, if you like this video, give us a like and subscribe. We've got a lot more TEAS 7 content coming up, so we're going to help you get your best score in 2024. All right, to get started about the English Language and Usage section, it's about 22% of the exam, according to the ATI website. And what you're going to see are 37 questions in 37 minutes, which means about a minute per question, although, of course, some will be easier, some will be more challenging. So let's get started looking at the topics that are covered in this section. First is spelling. So my first study tip is to look up some lists of commonly misspelled words by Americans. Remember, we're on American spelling here. The test is going to challenge you with a lot of double letter words like accommodation, occasion, vacuum, those type of words where you're questioning, are there two C's, two U's, what is correct? So be sure to study correct American spelling. They're also going to look at plurals. Of course, we all know regular plurals, we just stick an S at the end, but what about the irregular plurals like teeth and children and lives, all those kind of irregular plurals? If you don't know them, time to review them. Finally, we have homophones and homographs. So homophones sound the same but are different, like to see and then the sea, like the Mediterranean Sea. And then homographs are written the same, but they sound different and they might have a different meaning as well. So we have bass fishing and bass guitar, for example. So those are some things you're going to want to review if you haven't thought about spelling in a long time. Next, on to capitalization. This doesn't always come up on the test, but it could come up on the test. So know when to capitalize and when to use lowercase letters. So with proper nouns, which are the official names and titles of things, like for example, holidays and months of the year and people's names, we need to capitalize them. But we also might have some small prepositions somewhere in the middle that are not capitalized, like United States of America, for example. Now, a common topic that you're definitely going to see questions on, that's punctuation. So you're going to want to know all about your apostrophes, your hyphens, your periods, your commas. We're going to look at terminal punctuation. How do we end a sentence? For example, a complete sentence needs to end in a period, unless, of course, we need an exclamation mark or a question mark for a question. We're going to look at the punctuation in the middle of the sentence. For example, we can use a semicolon to bring together two independent clauses that are related in some way. A comma isn't strong enough for that. That's a type of question they might ask you. Be careful with your apostrophes too, because when we have a plural, like the girls are happy, we don't use an apostrophe there. But then if we say the girl's dog, the dog that belongs to the girl, we can have an apostrophe there because that's about possession. So make sure you know all those differences and review those if you haven't seen them in a while. Moving on to the next topic, parts of speech. So nouns, what is a noun? Well, it's a person, place, or thing, but that thing could be a feeling, an idea. Happiness is a noun, for example. Democracy is a noun. And what about a common noun or a proper noun? Well, a common noun is general, a dog. A proper noun is the official name or title of something like Snoopy, for example. About subjects versus objects. Well, grammatical subjects and objects are a little bit different than just those words, the way we use them every day, like an object is a thing. If we say she loves him, then she is the grammatical subject, the one doing the loving, and him is the one receiving the action, so that is the object of the verb. What about pronouns? What do pronouns do? What are pronouns? So if we replace the name Maria with she, That's a pronoun. But we have other ones. We have possessive pronoun like your or yours, her or hers, and then we even have relative pronouns. So those connect a bit of extra information into a sentence. The exam, which is difficult, the teacher, who is amazing, those are relative pronouns. What about verbs? That's our next part of speech. So maybe on the test, you'll have to find the correct form of the verb to complete a sentence. You might have to know the different verb tenses. You might have to identify what's a helping verb and a main or action verb. So if we say, I am making a video, am is the helping verb that says, helps me to describe that I'm in the middle of doing something, and making is really what I'm doing, making the video. So making is the main or action verb. We have a lot of different verb tenses in English, so it might be worth reviewing those. We have the present simple, I drink coffee every day. We have the past simple, which in the positive form only has one word, I drank coffee yesterday. We have the present perfect, which is something that started in the past but continues to the present or is still true in the present. I have drunk coffee every day since I was 16 years old. We have the past perfect, which I call the past of the past, and that's something we did before the past simple. So I had drunk my coffee before I left the house. We also have the progressive tenses for something that is happening over a period of time. When I said I am making a video, that's in progress right now. But what if I say yesterday I was running when I heard a loud sound? I was running. That's an action that was in progress in the past. So if you're not familiar with those verb tenses, especially if English is just one of the languages you speak, that might be worth reviewing. Now, there will likely be some questions about our next topic, our next parts of speech, adjectives and adverbs. What's the difference between these? So adjectives describe nouns or pronouns. For example, if I say the Amazon box is brown and square, we have an adjective coming before box, so that's Amazon, and then we have brown and square. So 3 adjectives there to describe the noun, box. What about adverbs? Of course, they can describe a verb. So he's saying happily, happily. How did he sing? Happily. That's a classic way we think of because it's adverb. But also adverbs can describe another adverb. So he's saying so happily. So is the adverb describing the adverb happily. Also, adverbs can describe adjectives. So if we say the building is extremely tall, tall is the adjective and extremely is the adverb describing it. So that can get a little tricky, especially around the adverbs and parts of speech. You will need to know our next part of speech, conjunctions. Conjunctions are connecting words. And for example, a question might ask you which sentence is connected, is put together with grammatically correct structure using a conjunction. We have different types of conjunctions. When we use a coordinating conjunction, we actually have an acronym for those. It's called fanboys. So for and nor, but, or, yet, so. And these will bring together 2 independent clauses that could stand on their own as individual sentences potentially. Then we have subordinate conjunctions. So those will bring together an independent clause that can stand on its own with a dependent clause that can't. I like chocolate, even though it isn't healthy. Prepositions. You'll need to know prepositions, and there's a lot of them. We have under, in, on, so many prepositions. We also have what's called prepositional phrases with the object of a preposition. What does that mean? If I say the cat is under the table, then under what? The table. The table is the object of the preposition, and under the table is the prepositional phrase. Subject-verb agreement is pretty important on this section of the test. What does it mean? Are the subject and verb fighting and they're not agreeing? Well, it just means matching the subject to the conjugation of the verb. So we say she is, we don't say she am or she are. That's basically what we mean. This might be a bit easier if you grew up speaking English, but there are still some tricky things that can catch you out. For example, the group is, we don't say the group are. And then if we say a group of people is, we still say is. And it seems a little funny to have the people next to the is, but that's why they want to trick you into choosing are, which is not correct. So don't get tricked by these types of questions. If English isn't your first language, Or if you're struggling a little bit to remember these concepts because you haven't used them since school, don't worry. You're definitely not the only one. You're not alone. We have a lot of active people on our website participating in our weekly tutoring, using our mobile app, taking our 8 practice tests, and looking at our over 100 educational videos. So we have so many resources to help you improve your TEAS 7 score, even if you find it challenging. We totally understand and we're here to help. So check out our resources. Types of sentences is definitely a topic to know really well. So an example question, for example, which of these sentences is a simple sentence with multiple choice options? So let's review. A simple sentence has one clause. Now it needs to be a complete sentence with the subject and verb. There might be additional other things, other descriptions, or the object of a verb. For example, if we say she went to the store, it has one clause, so it's a simple sentence. Complex sentence contains a dependent clause and an independent clause. For example, because she needed toilet paper, dependent clause. She went to the store, independent clause. And those are often joined by what's called subordinating conjunction. What about a compound sentence? So 2 independent clauses or more than 2. He went to the bank and she went to the store. So we see our coordinating conjunction connecting those. We could also use punctuation, for example, a semicolon. And a compound complex sentence. Maybe you haven't seen that one since school. I think I hadn't before I started doing these videos. But here we have at least 2 independent clauses and at least 1 dependent clause. So because they had so many errands to run, comma, he went to the bank and she went to the store. Some other types of sentences you might run into, active versus passive. So she was fired by the company is passive. The company fired her is active. Or exclamations like, oh no, watch out. Those are emotionally charged, surprise kind of sentences that are often really, really short with an exclamation mark. We see that. What about imperative? That's technically giving someone an order. So come over here, help me, go out. In these sentences, we understand that we're talking directly to the person, so we don't need to say you because we understand it's you I'm talking to when I give you an order. There's a very good chance you'll get a question about types of clauses. So whether identifying what type a clause is or choosing how to correctly connect it to another clause. So we've already looked at these really. We have our independent or sometimes called main clause, which can stand on its own as a sentence potentially. We have our dependent, sometimes called subordinate clause, which cannot stand on its own. And we have a coordinate clause. That's part of a sentence with a coordinating conjunction. So maybe the clause, and she went to the store in the sentence, he went to the bank and she went to the store. Formal and informal language. If you grew up speaking English, you're probably more familiar with this and might not need to review it as much, but really there's 2 aspects that are tested on this topic. So 1, identify if language is formal or informal. I think there's 2 keys to identifying the difference. So contractions are really important. What are contractions? They're smushed together words. So if I say I am, no contraction, that's formal. If I say I'm cool, that's a contraction, that's informal. Then there's also word choice. So if I say, I'm telling you, tell is kind of a relaxed everyday word. And if we say, I am informing you, inform is a more formal word that I wouldn't really use with my friends or my roommate. And that's the second aspect, is the context in which to use these types of language. So formal language, a school setting, an educational setting, a career setting, a lot of things outside of your personal life. So for example, going to the doctor or purchasing something like purchasing a car, these things outside of your free time, those things might have formal language. They're with people you don't know well as personal friends or family. On the other hand, informal language is for your friends, family. It's what you use in your personal life, in your free time when you're having fun. So that would be informal language. The writing process is not the most complex topic, but you're going to want to know the order of the steps to write something and what each step involves. So first we have pre-writing, everything you do before you write. So that is doing some research, brainstorming. Then we have drafting, which is writing your first draft. Then we have revising. So that's making big changes to the structure of the text or maybe some of the ideas. And finally, we have editing, is making the smaller grammatical and spelling type changes. Root words, prefixes, and suffixes. These are questions you will see on the test. Prefixes start the word, suffixes end the word. Root words can be mixed into the bigger word. So you're going to need to identify, for example, a prefix, like the prefix re. If I say I write my essay, then I say I rewrite, that means I do it again. So that's what re means. Or you're going to have to use your knowledge of prefixes, suffixes, and root words to find out the meaning of a more challenging word. For example, polytheist. Okay, we see poly like polyamorous, like polygon, like polygamy, that means many. And then we have the like theology, which means religion. So that's someone who believes in multiple gods, for example. Those might be something to review if you haven't seen that in a while. Context clues and multiple meaning words. So these can be tough. I think these are a bit tricky. For me, the best way to study these is to do as many practice questions like this as possible, so you really understand how the test makers think. And I do a lot of these practice questions in my live tutoring, and we have some online as well. So definitely check those out. What they're going to ask about is the meaning of a word. So sometimes they give you 4 potential definitions. Those you can kind of plug in place of the underlined word in the sentence, see which definition seems the most logical based on the sentence. Or they're going to ask you for the context clue. This is a little bit more tricky. They're asking not for the definition of the underlined word, but what other word in the sentence helps you find the definition of the underlined word. I think those can be a little bit tricky, especially if you don't already know the meaning of the underlined word. So do hop onto the website and get some practice on those. You might want to review some words that have multiple meanings as well. That's what comes up a lot here. So for example, racket, that could be a tennis racket. If we have some other sports vocabulary in the sentence, that could be, oh, my neighbors are making a racket, as in a lot of noise. We also have racket in the context of being kind of like a scam. So it really depends on the context clues in the sentence. So those are all our topics. What should be your next step if you're really trying to boost that score? Well, why don't you head over to the link in the description for the free TEAS 7 practice test. You're going to get a diagnostic about the ELU, the English Language and Usage section, and that way you can see what are your strongest and weakest topics in this section. And after that, you can check out our resources to study and get those weak topics really, really much stronger so you can ace the test. Give us a like if you liked the video, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks so much.